Okay, let's talk about retention. The goal of the retention stage is really just to get your customers to come back. Your users just experience the core value of your product because you did such a good job activating them, and now you need to make sure they do that again and again. And to do this, your product really needs to become a habit. It needs to become ingrained in their life. But why is retention so important? Well, it's necessary to build a sustainable business, because if your customers just keep evaporating to thin air, then you'll stop growing. So let's take a look by looking at what you call a birthday cake chart. So if we look at this business here, this is an example of bad retention, because you can see as they acquire new cohorts of users, they eventually just go to zero over time, and they end up totally churning out. So what happens is that in this particular case, they're acquiring the same amount of users every month, and they just hit this wall where they can't get past a certain point. If we look at that from the perspective of growth rate, you see they have a pretty good growth rate at the start, and then eventually it just hits zero, and you definitely don't want that. Now let's take a look at good retention. So if we take that same birthday cake chart for a business that has good retention, we see that flattening of the curve that we looked at earlier. That is what we really want to see. So this cohort is churning out at first, and then it eventually flattens out and retains in the long term. And if we do that, not only do we see that we grow over time, but also we get these layers of retained users that you're literally just building on top of. And that's where the birthday cake analogy comes in. If we look at the growth rate for this business, it's looking a lot better. Over here, instead of hitting zero, it's just going a little bit further down as the business scales. Secondly, retention really is the foundation to all growth. Customers that stick around spend more, they bring in new customers because they have more time to tell their friends about you, and they generate more money that you can now invest in acquisition. As Brian Balfour says, the point is every improvement that you make to retention also improves all of these other things. Virality, LTV, payback period. It is literally the foundation to all of growth, and that's really why retention is the king. So what will we learn in this section? Number one, how to define retention for your business, much like we did for activation. Number two, how to discover retention opportunities. And number three, how to improve retention.